Weather Channel Forecast Center.
Good evening and welcome back to the Weather Channel. I'm Gene Rubin. Beside me this evening, Jim Wilson, one of our senior meteorologists here at the Weather Channel. The latest on Hurricane Edouard as it continues to move in a northeasterly direction, which should continue to pull it a little further to the east of Cape Cod. In a few moments, will be joining us. Mike Seidel will be joining us live and letting us know what's going on. There's some power outage problems. We'll tell you about that in just a moment. Jim, tell us a little bit about Edouard.
Okay, Edouard, as it moves north into the colder water, it's beginning to weaken, but it's still a very strong Category 1 storm. It's forecast to continue to move along just east of north and approach the outer banks of the Cape Cod area. Right now the winds are 90 miles per hour. It's moving north-northeast about 14 miles per hour. Again, pressure 964, and so some gusty winds have already begun to hit the outer Cape, and for the next 6 hours we could be approaching near hurricane force winds. We can see in the satellite the hurricane continues to move northward, and you can see the westerly winds to the north of the system have kind of strung the circulation center all the way out towards Nova Scotia, but the dense, overcast, and deep convection around the center continues to hold steady, and that's the reason why we're expecting hurricane force winds to approach the outer islands in the next couple of hours.
So, but the worst of it should stay off the coast. The worst problem might be a storm surge. We'll talk about that in just a moment. I want to talk about strike probabilities real quickly here before we go to Mike live in Cape Cod.
Okay, the strike probabilities, again, with the center continuing to move towards the north, we expect the highest probability to be just to the east of the Cape Islands, and the outer Cape of the Elbow could see hurricane force winds as we approach the morning hours. It should pass about within 70 miles of it. Hurricane force winds are about 50 miles from the northeast of the center.
We'll look at the wind field just a moment. Also, we have the tropical storm warnings in effect. Okay,
tropical storm force winds are now offshore in Chatham and Falmouth and New Bedford area. Back towards Fire Island, and we have lesser winds, but outer Long Island to the Cape, we're experiencing tropical storm winds right now.
And of course, the hurricane warning.
Okay, the hurricane warning, as the storm continues to move towards the Cape, we expect the hurricane force winds to brush the outer Cape, and this is the reason why we have the hurricane warnings up. And again, with any kind of hurricane, you expect the winds to drive a storm surge. We can see right now on the windshield chart, the wind field chart, we can see most of the strongest winds are off to the east and northeast of the center. Back to the western sector, we see a smaller area, but that's the section that's going to be moving close to the outer banks of the Cape Cod.
And you mentioned the storm surge here.
Okay, storm surge, the biggest concern we have with the storm surge would be the north-facing beaches in Cape Cod, around Barnstable Harbor, East Dennis, Yarmouth, over to Sagamore. Those places there could see in the bays storm surges about 8 feet or so. As you get to the south-facing beaches, where Mike Seidel is, we're looking for a storm surge about 3 to 5 feet. The outer elbow of Cape Cod, again, with the winds a little steadier there and they're facing the ocean, we're looking for storm surges there to be about 3 to 6 feet. But the biggest surge, of course, will be in Cape Cod, in the bays in the Cape Cod area.
Speaking of Mike Seidel, he is one of the south-facing beaches, so to speak, in Chatham, Massachusetts. And Mike, you mentioned to me a few moments ago that you had a power outage problem right in your area.
That's right, Gene. Just about 5-6 minutes ago, we were sitting up in the room and the power went. It flickered on a couple of times. We thought we had our juice back, and no go. So we may be in the only light in the area. There are a few emergency lights on. I can see in the hotel they have the lights on in the stairwells, but we're in the dark here. Obviously, one of the byproducts of Edouard, all the wind knocking down some trees over some power lines. We've had that problem reported earlier in Nantucket, and now we're getting it here in Chatham on the east end of Cape Cod.
Yeah, I'm looking behind you there, and it looks like those trees are bending pretty good. Maybe the wind's still gusting around 40 to 50 or 60 miles an hour.
I think some of these gusts are approaching 60 miles an hour, if not better. I know the airport has not reported wind gusts that high, but just from my experience of being into the weather for 25 or 30 years and noticing the old Beaufort scale, how the trees bend, I think some of these gusts have topped out at 60 miles an hour. We're also protected from the wind because the ocean is on the other side of the building, so we're not getting the full brunt of Edouard where we're standing right here. But a lot of wind, but we have had a break in the rain right now, so it's actually a rather delightful evening out here right now. No power and no rainfall, and by the way, no more room service. So what's a guy to do?
Did you say the word delightful somewhere in that description?
It's more delightful than it was, Gene. We're not getting those lashing horizontal rainfalls, but based on the radar you've been showing us, the rains will be coming back here to Cape Cod in the next 15 or 20 minutes, at least here around the Chatham area. Just a temporary break.
That's the way it looks like on the radar, a little bit of a break. More squalls coming in, more squalls offshore. I think you need a break, get a couple hours of sleep. We'll see you live in just a few hours.
Okay, thanks, Gene.
Thank you, Mike. And let's look at some of those rain squall bands right now. They continue to move off to the west and northwest. You can see them circulating around the low pressure area, Hurricane Edouard itself. You can't quite see the eye. It's probably just off your screen to the south and east, or just to the right of that circular band, the lower part of your screen. That's the eye of the storm, still well off the coast, but those heavy rain bands continue to move onshore, and wherever you see the yellow, that's where some of the heaviest rain is occurring at this time. But of course, Jim, we not only have to deal with Edouard, we're also going to have to deal with Fran.
Yeah, Edouard kept us busy, but now all eyes are moving south as we see another hurricane, and it's gathering strength rather rapidly. Winds right now are about 85 miles per hour. We can see there's a well-established eye. The dense cirrus overcast over the center is looking a lot better, and so we're kind of concerned with this system as it moves towards the west-northwest. We expect this to continue to develop over the next couple of days because the upper-level winds are very favorable, so the possibility of another concern for the southeast coast is there. The Hurricane Center, again, watching this very closely, moving it towards the west-northwest by 72 hours, pretty close to the Bahamas. So we really want to be accentuating that if you're having vacation plans, go ahead with them, but about Tuesday night and Wednesday, we really need to be watching this close to see where the track of this one's going to go as it increases in strength. We expect it to be about a Category 3 in about 72 hours.
So another maybe a couple of days of a break in the action, with Edouard moving off into Canada possibly, and then we have to deal with Hurricane Fran, very active tropical season. We're going to be back with a tropical update coming up in about 10 minutes. First, we're going to go into the studio and check out some local weather around the country with Christina Abernathy. Christina?
All right, thanks, Gene. Of course, we're in the middle of a holiday weekend. A lot of folks interested in what's going on with the forecast. We'll have that coming up in just a moment. First, we want to take a look at some current weather, starting out with our temperatures. Right now, Atlanta checking in at 66 degrees, 72 in Dallas, 97, still quite warm in Phoenix. To the north we go, 65 in Chicago, and 74, your current temperature in New York City. We see a bit of wet weather scattered across the country, of course, associated with Edouard, as Gene just showed you. Associated with the frontal boundary here, some rain and some thunderstorm activity. Some of it has been quite rough through the Dakotas and on into Minnesota tonight. And we also have scattered showers and thunder showers through the southeast. A bit of fog as well. If you're going to be out driving, take it extra slow out here. Visibilities could be certainly reduced. And notice too that we also have a bit of scattered activity through the Four Corners region as well. But it's to the north where we're concerned with the threat of severe weather. The potential still there for severe storms, and we do have a watch in effect, a severe thunderstorm watch for parts of the Dakotas on into Minnesota. You need to be on the lookout for strong gusty winds, for hail, and for maybe some heavy amounts of rain with some of these storms. You can see Fargo getting the wet weather, the yellows and the reds indicating where the more intense activity is. Some of that now moving off to the east of Fargo, and we see that line extending, or sort of a broken line extending back to the south and northern South Dakota. All of that associated with our frontal boundary. Into the southeast, scattered activity continuing around Memphis. You had a bit of a soggy night here. On towards Montgomery and the vicinity, and around Atlanta, scattered activity here, generally moving in a northerly direction. Well, that's where things stand currently. Let's see what's in store for your forecast for Labor Day. Starting out the day with rain in the southeast. This area of low pressure, it's going to keep things a bit unsettled here. Scattered showers and thunderstorms possible throughout the day here. Atlanta, Birmingham, New Orleans, keep that in mind if you have outdoor plans. The potential is there for some wet weather. Of course, we notice Edouard still here off the northeast coast, no doubt bringing some wet weather to the New England coast, as well as some windy conditions. And our front still in the picture here. It is still going to be the focal point for rain and thunderstorms. Monsoonal moisture